Hello, I'm going to go over the full mod process of upgrading the antenna on a DJI Phantom remote controller. It doesn't matter if this is a Phantom 2 2.4 GHz control or a 5.8 GHz control, the process is the same. So we're going to be able to change this fixed antenna, which I think is a 1 dBi gain antenna. It might be a 2, I think it's a 1 though, a 1 dB gain antenna. So I can use any screw-on antenna, and I will be using an RP.SMA and U.FL cable. This is a thicker cable on this particular one. I've used thinner ones in the past. But this is an RP.SMA Female connector to a U.FL Female. And this is an RG178 cable. If you're interested in using a thicker cable, it'll work fine regardless if you use the regular one, which most people have listings for on eBay, or the thicker one. But the thicker one will just give you a bit more insulation, a slightly higher quality cable. So that's a U.FL Female. Also, I think it's another name for it, I think is an IPX or IPX Mini. And this is an RP, which is reverse polarity, SMA Female. Connectors with a pin are usually male, but since it's reverse polarity, the male becomes female. So the most difficult part of the process for this is that the cable that's connected inside from the antenna to here is glued down, kind of, with like a silicone or some sort of glue. So that has to be cut out. So that's one of the most difficult parts of the process. And the second most difficult part will be how you mount it, if you're going to put it in the same spot, if you're going to put another hole. So let's start off with and if you're running a Phantom 2 or Phantom 2 Vision controller, make sure that you're in FCC mode. When you turn the thing on, you hear 2 beeps. And you can turn FCC mode on and off by turning the screw here with the flat end of your screwdriver. You put it in, it only goes one turn. It doesn't turn multiple times. But you turn it clockwise all the way. So when you turn it on, you hear 2 beeps. That's FCC mode. It has higher power output. If you're not getting the range you want still, then you can change out the antennas. The only reason why I need to upgrade my antennas now is because of my M-top setup, including better antennas as well as amplifier. Now, I can get into the 1.5 to 2 kilometer range, or even well further than that, depending on where I fly. So at this point, I need better range, and these are some examples of antennas that people have used with this mod. I've heard of people getting roughly triple the range using this. It's labeled usually as a 5.8 gigahertz when you look at the description and ads, but it works with 2.4 as well. Give you about roughly 8 dB gain on 2.4 gigahertz and an 11 dBi gain on 5.8 gigahertz. This is like a 3 dBi antenna, a 5 dBi TP-Link 2.4 gigahertz antenna, which I have no doubt will be working fine on the 5 gigahertz, and an 8 dBi. The problem with going too high in gain on these antennas here is that your signal that's transmitted from these antennas turns from a from a bubble shape to more of a donut. And the weakest signal is coming out of the tip of the antenna. So this you can have a pretty good bubble out of, but as you increase gain, that bubble is going to start getting more compressed into a donut shape. But anyway, either the 3 or 5 will give you, I think, plenty of extra range. Probably the 5 will give you the nicest in between as far as radiation pattern and range. And here's a 5.8 gigahertz circular polarized cloverleaf antenna, an inexpensive one. Got on Amazon. I got this on Amazon too. You start off doing this upgrade by first doing the 4 screws here, 4 Phillips. So let's do that. I already took the batteries out. I'm using the Sanyo XX and Eneloop batteries. Eneloop batteries hold charge for much longer than a standard rechargeable battery. It holds charge more like an alkaline battery. You know, you can let it sit a long time, it'll still have its charge in it. And this higher end line of chargeables, the professional XX series, also goes into extreme temperatures versus their cheaper models. So pop these batteries out. Pop these screws out. Alright, now the way to lift this up, we just lift it at an angle, and this plastic noose bends, so don't worry about it. Just be careful because there's a battery lead here, so don't pinch that or pull it. So I'm just going to kind of bend it up. Comes right off here, no problem. Now let me show you the adhesive I was telling you about. See that white stuff is covering, is concealing access to the U.FL connector, so it has to be, you have no choice but to literally cut it off, cut it away. But you have to be very, very careful because you could easily damage the board or the transmitter or the connector when trying to do this, so be careful. Trying to get this in position. Sorry for all that movement. So what I'm going to try to do is do this while the camera's running so you can see how long it takes me. I've never done this before. I'm going to use my knife here. This is a really good quality knife. It's very sharp, like a razor blade. It's a Kershaw, made in USA. So you might or might not really be able to see what I'm doing, but I'm more concerned right now with doing a careful job in cutting this off rather than the visibility. Kind of not damaging anything takes priority, but just so you can see how difficult it is for me to do as a first timer knocking this out. And when replacing the cable on here, you might even want to consider reapplying an adhesive on it so that you're not flying around and so there's no chance of this thing coming loose. You don't want to fly and then find you're losing control signal early on. Granted, that's less of an issue if you have good satellite lock with your return to home working properly. What I've done so far is cut off the top of the silicone from here. I'm working on this and a little bit on the side so far, and I'm going to try the back. I mean, you try not to rush this process, although I am doing it a little bit faster than I probably ideally should be doing it, but flip this around here. Now where is this? You see there's a little bit of a hole there too. So try to get on the silicone on both sides of this connector. Sure if it's loose enough yet. Now you can always skip ahead in this video if you don't want to see me working to cut the silicone away. But I just thought I'd leave this part in here, at least for the sake of you seeing how this is for me doing this for the first time and how long it takes me to do it my first time out. You know, you don't want to damage the board here, so you got to try to be a little careful. It might be good enough. Let's see if I can lift this up. Okay. Using a pair of pliers, I kind of tore it off the rest of the way as I felt that I had enough of the adhesive off. Now let me see if it looks like the port appears to be intact, although I may need to clean off some of the remaining silicone. You see there? There's some silicone on either side. I'm going to want to clean a little bit of that off on either side before connecting the new connector. So hang on while I try to do that. And also see if you can see what I'm doing. I mean, at this point I could try to just attach the other one, but I want to make sure that it's flush on there. So I do want to get that off. At least the parts of it that are right next to the There's always a certain amount of stress with this because you could easily accidentally short out the components while trying to touch the stuff to work on it, or you could damage it with your tools while you're working on it. Any sort of number of mishaps could happen, compromising the product. And as far as I know, they don't sell just the transmitter board. You'd have to replace the entire controller. Let me see, can you see that? Okay. 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 I'm not 100% sure if this is clear enough, but sorry about the blurriness. I'm trying to get this to just focus in close as I can. Give it a second. It might need to get a little bit more of the silicone off the side of the rim. Because again, you want the U.F.L connector to sit flush. Well, enough zooming in. I think you get the idea. Let me try to get another look by eye. Again, I'm not going to be cutting in and out on this video for at least this portion of it. Just so you can see my process of cleaning off the connector, which is really the most challenging part of the whole mod. And installing the connector can be easy or difficult depending on how you want to do it. I want to clear a little bit more off here. There's a solder connection on the side too, so I gotta be careful that I don't mess up any of the solder there. I'm using my nail to clean off some of the little residual silicone sitting on here. I don't know, I'm hoping that's good enough. So this is how the connector comes off here. I'm just going to tilt it forward. I mean down this way at an angle. So it's like this and you bend it that way. And I'm going to slide it underneath this. See if I can pull the thing underneath. I'll pop that out. Here's the original antenna and the U.F.L connector. So it can be reinstalled if you wanted to. You'll just want to clean that off a little bit. Now let's get onto the new connector. Again, there's several ways you can do this. Let me take off the screws from here. Screws and the washers for now. There are several ways you can go about installing this. You could leave the main hole intact and just drill a new hole, like either in front or on the back panel. Drill a 1/4-inch hole, will get you through here. Or you could put it down this way. And you'll need to shim off the top here. You'll need to shim off that lip. If you want to put it in like that, you can trim the slip off. That'll give you the clearance to screw stuff on. Or you can have it over here, like that. I'm going to give you an example of how this would go in. Sorry, you can't. For the poor view. If you don't make any mods to the little notch in here, you're going to have a wee bit of a gap. Actually, no, there's no gap. Okay. Excuse me while I'm just moving the cables in under here so they don't get pinched on anything. Get in here. This thing is proving stubborn. Okay, if you leave your controller unaltered, you can screw it in like that. There will be a little bit of a gap. So if you don't want that gap to be there, you'll need to Dremel out the inside of this portion a little bit, enough so that it will clamp down. And then you can have your antenna on here. You know what? Let me see. How much would I need to mod that by? So I think I'm going to Dremel this up right over here. So that way when I lay it over it, it'll be flush. But how this actually connects here, let me show you. You just put this right over the connector here. And snap it down. Make sure it's centered. There. And you literally hear snap when it's connected. So if you don't want to play around with it, it is perfectly fine leaving this untouched. You'll have a wee bit of a gap. No big deal at all. You'll probably want to manually add some bends into this cable, or get a shorter RJ178 cable, so that way it's the right length. This is an 8-inch cable, by the way. The reason why I say maybe add some bends is because you don't want to add any tension to the side where it's actually connected into the controller. I mean, that would be your connection there. But just like pre-bends this to a little bit of a loop, but nothing like sharp, just like a rounded thing. So that way there's not too much tension on the connector. That's right over there. Anyway, let me come back after I've modified that. Alright, I've got this thing already. I've got it masked off so when I drill I won't get any debris on the interior. And it's my Dremel. I'm going to use this cutting wheel to basically replicate this. You see the notch side here and how this kind of fits in here already. I'm going to kind of replicate something similar on this side. So I'm going to come back in when it's done. I decided I'm going to change my mind and just cut this whole lip off. So I'm really not going to be going back to stock on this because I'm not getting quite enough room with it connector in here. I'd have to cut this slide out further up so that way, because there's just shy of enough room to get this thing fully screwed down. So it's going to be a little bit more complicated hollowing this part out than just chopping the lip off, because I'm never going to be going back. So I'm put this here, use the cutting wheel, cut it straight down, and then that's that. Alright, so let me show you what I ended up deciding to do is cutting off the entire front piece over here all together. And this is how I have my wire in here. You might want to put a piece of electrical tape here, maybe some of that silicone glue over there once you know that it's working and you didn't. And sometimes you can get bad cables that aren't good or that have shorts in it if you don't have good range. I recommend when you get cables to always get a couple, just in case you get one that might be a little bit iffy. Now another tricky part here is this end is not really being secured down, so when I try to tighten the nut, this could move around a bit. So you might want to find some sort of way to secure this for tightening it. I haven't decided on anything for that. What I might see is holding a cloth, putting a piece of cloth and using a pair of pliers to hold this end while I use another pair of pliers to tighten the nut on without the center piece rotating, and hopefully I can do it without damaging the threads. I mean, ideally you'd want to try to figure a way to adjust this so that way something is holding the back to keep it from moving. Either by gluing it, you could certainly glue it, or just getting, or maybe putting something on top of it, or a piece of foam or something, so when you sandwich two tops it holds it together better. Actually, no, that wouldn't be good. Probably putting some sort of adhesive or putting a notch in here to hold it, or trying to hold this as tight as you can while tightening the nut so this doesn't rotate. Let me show you how this is with the two pieces down together. and I will cut back in when I've tightened the nut down. Okay, now here's the finished result. I hand tightened the nut by holding this as tight as I could on the end while using my plier and moving the nut, first hand tightening the nut until it came down most of the way, holding this as tight as I could with my right hand, using this and moving it very, very slowly, making sure I could get it snug without this piece moving around, doing that very careful. And I was able to get it down very tight. In fact, so tight to the point where these two pieces lifted up a wee bit, which is really no big deal. I could always loosen it and retighten it again, or you could clamp this together with something while tightening it to make sure the two halves don't lift apart. But it's snug enough that I can get on all of my antennas without the connector rotating, which is very important. You'll want to test fit your connectors before going out in the field to make sure you can do that too. See, I can spin this on and I can move this without it rotating my connector. Any of these antennas should give you a boost over the stock antenna. This one will especially give you the biggest boost out of all of them, but now you run into the issue where you have to be pointed at your Phantom or it's not going to be effective. This only has a 30-degree range, so it doesn't give you the largest field of view, but a lot of people use this particular antenna. And you will get very good results with it. Just remember, again, keep in mind you have to have this thing pointed at your Phantom. So you're flying around, you have this pointed. I mean, you have to have the controller pointed in the general direction anyway, but you could be accidentally have it fly off to the side and not realize where it is, and then boom, suddenly you lose control. And this rotates too. This bit over here. And this also works well on the 2.4 gigahertz side too. And I'm probably going to mostly use this one on it, the 5 dBi TP-Link, depending on how I'm flying. Again, let's spin this around, make sure the base doesn't rotate. Yeah, that is good. It's not too big. And there you have it. You'll want to keep this pointed up so it'll be the same polarity as the antenna orientation on the Phantom. Alright, so that's about it. Please like and subscribe. Enjoy your extended range. Actually, I'm going to go for a test flight and maybe cut back in again and say, yep, this works well. But yep, please like and subscribe.